earlier on. I'm going to refer to several of the points that they made, but I'm thinking this more the perspective of people who deal with intermediaries, build networks, what's helped me become, in my own modest way, successful in an organisation which had a very nascent investment banking, investment management business when I joined it 5.5 years ago, and we're still very small compared to most of the organisations in this room, but which is nevertheless growing extremely fast, and it's all very high quality stuff as well, I'm pleased to say. I'm aware I've got 2 colleagues in the room, so I'm expecting some brutal heckling at some point in the not too distant future. But anyway, the key things that have actually sort of enabled us in our own small way to become successful, I've got 3 little headings here and some notes, reams of them, you'll be pleased to know, so Eric will be late for his 8 o'clock appointment. Networking, it all starts with networking. If you've got a story to tell, you've got to tell that story, and whether it's with your clients, or whether it's with the intermediaries, or indeed within your organisation, networking is incredibly important. Your own personal standards and stand behind it is really important. And the simple fact of the matter is, people do business with people they like and who are credible. And that's where networking really helps you build your personal equity. So in all instances, whether I say it's the intermediary community, your client base, or your colleagues at work, you have to be persistent, but do not pester. So this comes back to following up, being responsive, and letting people know that you've listened to what they've got to say. Within the organisation, your existing contacts, any of those 3, are the best way for you to expand your network as well. You have a good experience in an organisation, and people have a good experience with you, they'll introduce you to their colleagues, and you can do the same within your organisation. So my colleagues here, I've introduced via contacts I've made through maybe offshore or something like that, to people in the entrepreneurial world, because that's their specialist area. And the more you expand these networks, the greater sense of community between your organisation and their organisation. So the corollary of that is, do not be open. You do not own those relationships. Be expansive, and you will meet lots of people who want to come and talk to you because you're expansive. So I really emphasise that. And you'd be amazed as well how out of a little kernel of a contact, through a different route, you suddenly find somewhere in the regions or whatever, a contact with whom you resonate personally and actually talk sense to, who will then introduce you to his friends all over the country within the organisation where he works, and they're people he sees eye to eye with, and you come endorsed, and that really does help your network expand, and it's exponential when it begins to happen. I've written down here, show interest professionally and personally. We've all got things we're good at, things we're interested in, and so on, and we need to establish exactly what that is about the people we're talking to as well, because we're not all cardboard cutouts, we're all individuals underneath it. And on the back of that, you can end up finding the right horse for the right course. And if you show that you've shown some thought about why you selected somebody as one of the 3 lawyers you're going to recommend for this particular issue, and they're all appropriate for the job, you make the right impression with the client, and the lawyers you've spoken to and put them in the frame, they'll understand that they're the right people for the job. And that reflects well on you without you actually having to do anything. I've also written down here, personal interests. You need to build, I understand very much what Eric says about demarcation of personal and professional lives. And it is very seductive to go to some of the events that our very wealthy clients take us along to. But if you talk the same language as them, it puts you in a very strong position. And I've written down here a few of my interests, whether it's sport, shooting, wine, classic cars, or whatever else. You can be a little bit cerebral about it as well. Find a point of contact with them, because when they understand you're a human being as well, not just an employee, then they will open up and they'll warm to you. I've also written down seminars. I turn up to a lot of seminars. You always get a kernel of something out of it. It keeps you appear to be fresh and up to date with developments, particularly in the legal world and so on, or in the accountancy world. There's a budget around the corner or something like that. And being au courant effectively is really important. You said follow up. I've written follow up here as well. It's incredibly important as well. Be responsive. And then the last thing I've written is snowball. You get all these tendrils out there, and gradually, some of them start to gain traction, and it's astonishing how they all begin to link up. So and so knows so and so, and so and so, and before you know it, you have a fantastic network. And that's particularly relevant at the client level as well, because the level we're dealing at, a lot of them know each other. And you don't have to sell yourself to somebody else, someone else will do it for you. The next piece I've written is about credibility. There are a lot of nice people. I said people like dealing with people they like, but you need to stand out from the crowd. So you might be able to do it by your personality. Some people are particularly vivacious, but it's certainly not true of all of us. So try and find an area where you have specific professional competence. For me, in my instance, I run our offshore platform, so I make sure, although I'm not legally qualified, I'm really aware of the technical issues confronting people who do offshore, res-non-dom investing and so on. Because if you can talk to the clients knowledgeably, without giving advice, and to their professional advisors, understanding exactly what they're trying to achieve, you make their lives easier on both sides, and they'll come back to you for more, and they will refer, and they'll mention you to their friends and so on. I happen to be a member of STEP. It's a very highly respected professional body, as you all know. When I was launching our offshore platform in the Channel Islands and talking to all the trust companies and so on, they're all members of STEP, instant point of contact. So that was really important. Gave us credibility which we didn't have based on the track record because we were basically a nascent business. And then at the personal level, because I deal with lots of res-non-doms, in my instance, find something that you're good at. I did languages at university, so I speak French and German and smashing of Italian. If I'm talking to the Europeans, you can always build a cultural bridge, even though the rest of the meeting is almost certainly going to be held in English. They know you get them, you speak their language. So that's a really useful little tip in my opinion. So I've written down areas where you want to be specialist. I mentioned offshore. It might be something, it might be property from an investment perspective. It might be helping people with investor visas. You might specialise in talking to people who are involved in private equity. Any of those things as examples. If you demonstrate competence in one specific area, you get taken seriously. On other matters, even though you might not know what you're talking about, people will assume you do because you weren't an idiot on one other particular issue. So that enables you to at least be consulted, be helpful and pointed in the right direction of someone who will be able to help them. And they really appreciate that. And that happens both at the intermediary level and at the client level. The other thing about things like STEP or Citywealth is it presents you with loads of networking opportunities as well. And if they're sort of specific clubs where you've actually got to sort of pass some qualification to become a member, then you're all in it together and people network more actively with you rather than just sort of a random scattergun approach. And then the final thing I think is all about my own personal journey, without wishing to bore you too much, but you know, I'm quite an old man, I've been around the block and I've worked for a number of institutions, and I finally found an environment where I'm comfortable with who I am and the environment I work in. And I would really recommend that if they're asking you to do something at work that you're not comfortable with, you're probably in the wrong place. I'm not expecting you all to resign tomorrow. But, so this is really an extension of credibility. And this comes back to something that Saskia said a minute ago. I've written down, don't try and do what you or your organisation are not equipped to do. However, never leave people stuck up a blind alley. Give them a suggestion as to where they might go, how their problem can be resolved. You may not have the solution, but at least you've been helpful and they'll come back to you for more. Big philosophical point here, integrity, and I sort of mentioned it already. I mean, it's a very personal thing, and what you consider to be integrity is entirely up to you, but you've got to be completely comfortable with yourself that you're putting the client's interests first. You will prosper on the back of it, I can assure you. Transparency, a very simple thing, but people know if you're being honest, and my colleagues will confirm, as often as not, when we win a beauty parade, yes, the performance has got to be there or thereabouts, but it's actually the transparency that people cite is the main reason they've actually picked us in the end. And then good old KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Don't overcomplicate it. Put it in a language that they can understand, and that reassures them. They get scared by being sold something which they don't fully understand. And then the final thing I've written, and then Eric can go off to dinner, is believe in what you do. Because if you really believe in it, you sell without selling, and that's when people believe you. So there we go. My philosophy, over to questions.